When the first gargoyle appeared on Joe Parks' roof, we thought it was some kind of newfangled art installation, like that Banks fella does. It was an ugly thing, but we figured that was the point. Isn't that what modern art is about? Trying not to be art? That's why it's all shapes now, right? Anyway, Joe was just the first. The next showed up on Old May Pratter's cottage, and then the Reverend's place. He tried to remove it, said it was satanic, but even a professional couldn't get it to budge. Soon, everyone had one squatting on the gutter, grimacing at us all day. After a while, they just became part of the scenery. No one paid them much mind. Guess we should've, but hindsight is 20/20, they say. It happened to Joe first. It was slow. So slow even his wife didn't notice until it was too late. Just one day we looked up and the gargoyle had Joe's face. People talked about it, but no one could say what it meant. We thought maybe the art installation had reached a second stage. The Reverend had cameras installed to catch the fella who was playing his prank. But when he looked at the footage, that's not what he saw. Late at night, when the moon shone full on the rough stone, the gargoyle gave a shiver. Its head moved this way, then that. Its claws flexed and its paws came free of the rooftop. With the grace of a big cat, it climbed straight down the wall and straight into Reverend's bedroom window. We've tried everything to keep them out. Iron, rowan twigs, salt, holy water, crucifixes, Bibles, lamb's blood, you name it. But even when we lock our doors and board up our windows, they still manage to get in. It ate at us, seeing each other's faces and seeing the gargoyles take on our wrinkles and moles and scars, watching us with our own eyes. And in the mirror, our own skin looking grayer every day, the pits and etchings of chisels becoming more and more pronounced. We reckon Joe might know how to fix it. They showed up at his house first, after all. Maybe he knew something we didn't. Joe didn't answer when we knocked, not even when we pounded. He didn't show himself when we broke down the door, cocking our shotguns and demanding answers. Instead, we found his wife down in the basement, sitting at the bottom of the stairs. She looked at us with dusty, tear-stained cheeks and held out the pieces in her hands, gray and dry, the rest scattered all around her. "He fell," was all she said. They call him Earl. People see him in the woods outside of town. He's why no one dresses up as the Easter Bunny anymore. The grown-ups say he's just an urban myth, started decades ago. There was this guy, you see, Earl Gibbons. His wife left him, took the kids. He was a drinker, and one day he got this idea. He'd dress up in a bunny suit, surprise his kids. So he showed up at the house his wife got in the divorce, and the place is filled to bursting. His wife's whole family was there, down to the kids' great-grandpa. He knocks on the door, and his little niece answers it. She's so excited because it's the Easter Bunny. She asks if he brought any presents. He says, Sure, of course I did. Here you go, here's your present. And he blows her away with a shotgun. Everyone panics, everyone's screaming, and he's just firing away at everyone he can get. When he runs out of bullets, he gets out the flamethrower. The house goes up. A lot of people die, not his wife and kids. He went through all that trouble, and they got out fine. The police knew who he is right away. The survivors recognized him. Earl, ex-husband Earl. Crazy, drunk, psychotic Earl. So the cops go to arrest him. But when they found him, he'd already eaten a bullet. You know, the vinyl in the costume. It melted, adhered to his skin. He was melted into his suit, and when he died, he and it were one piece. But his kids are still out there. Now he wanders, looking for them, itching for them to join him. And the grown-ups, they say, he's an urban legend. But we kids, we know he's real. It's kind of a rite of passage to get a glimpse of him. Every kid wants to be the one who got closest, who proved the legend real. You gotta bring something back. Ethan and I, we said we'd get his tail. We show everyone our switchblades, said we'd cut it right off. Turns out a few inches of steel aren't much against an urban legend. I hang from the shack wall, the rope around my wrists so tight, my hands are numb, my jeans are wet with piss. I can barely breathe through the duct tape across my mouth. But it's nothing compared to what Ethan's feeling. He stopped screaming a while ago. I'd think he was dead if it wasn't for the way he thrashes every so often. The knives lay dripping blood in the sink, loose skin piled on the counter. Earl hums as he pulls the thread, his awakened paws leaving jagged stitches. Ethan's new skin is blue, fur gone gray with grime. Purple where the needle's gone in. Something hangs on the opposite wall. Green matted fur. Limp, chewed ears, a matching costume. It's just my size. We knew it was the work of a cult. They left their insignia at each of the murders, a simple smiley face painted in blood. The manner varied, but there was a pattern. Restraints and strangulation, torture and stab wounds, mangled corpses drained of blood. Each crime was a love letter to a serial killer. What we didn't understand was that it wasn't about killing. Their killing had a purpose. We were expecting resistance when we raided the compound. We expected panic or hatred. But their leader only patiently endured as we handcuffed them. "You're going away for a long time," my partner told them, forcing them roughly into the squad car. To our surprise, they smiled. "It doesn't matter," they said, a look of euphoria on their faces. "It's already done." The radio on my belt crackled. Our men had found something in the basement. "Looks like another crime." "Wait, what's that? What's happening? Oh my God! Oh my!" And then silence. My partner and I rushed to the basement. Guns drawn, screams drew us down, and when they suddenly cut off, we stalked ahead, barely breathing. It was obvious at first glance that the basement was their ritual space. Runes marked the walls and floor, and candles burned down to puddles. The bodies of my friends and colleagues littered the space, blood an inch thick on the floor. Crouched over them, feasting on the still warm flesh, was a monster. My hands shook as my mind struggled to comprehend its grotesque body. A dozen arms protruded from its heavily muscled torso, flexing and flailing in all directions. The legs were thick as barrels, the skin so tight it burst the muscles in places, raw meat showing through. Put your hands up?" I stared in shock at my partner. What on earth was he doing? This thing obviously wasn't a person. There was no way we could bring it in. At his shout, the thing paused its feasting. With a wet thud, it dropped the body it was devouring, and stood. Its full height had to be at least 12 feet, its head nearly scraping the ceiling. In the dim light, I could see there was something wrong with its head. There were bumps and bald patches as though it was ill. Then it turned to face us. I understood my mistake. It had not one head, but many. They piled on its shoulders and protruded from its chest. Raking my eyes over this nightmare, I recognized faces. Dahmer, Gein, Bundy, Gacy. The thing lumbered forward, reaching its many hands towards us. My partner and I fired, working solely on instinct until our guns clicked empty. The thing only laughed in dozens of distorted voices and reached for us again. Mary was doing laundry in the basement when the angel came to her. She'd just set the cycle when a light appeared in midair, so bright she couldn't help but look upon it. From the light came a voice. I bring you tidings of great joy, for you shall conceive of a son, and he shall remake the world of man. What happened after, she would never say, though she always smiled at the memory. As the being said, Mary found herself with child. This did in fact bring her great joy, and she often spoke to her growing bump, reading it passages from the Bible, and singing hymns. Months passed and the baby grew. Mary's due date passed. But that happened, sometimes. After a week, her doctor suggested they induce labor. Mary didn't like the idea. Wouldn't God take care of his son? But after a detailed description of what could happen if the pregnancy was allowed to continue, she agreed. Her doctors administered the medication and waited. And waited. When it became clear medically induced labor wasn't in the cards, her doctors ordered a cesarean. No one quite knows what happened during the procedure. Mary, of course, was sedated and had no memory of it. After 2 hours, a single nurse came bolting out of the room, empty sockets streaming from her face. When the hospital staff entered the room, the medical team lay crumpled around the operating table, their faces chewed beyond recognition. The OBGYN performing the procedure was missing his arm from the elbow down, teeth marks clear in the flesh. Only the anesthesiologist seemed unharmed. They found him in the corner, his arms around his knees, rocking. "It doesn't want to come out," was all he'd say. Mary was moved to a private room where the staff watched her belly swell. The skin bulged as the thing within moved, faint growling noises muffled by flesh. There, Mary would say, her eyes sunken, her skin gray and stretched tight over her skull. "All in God's time, little one, all in God's time." One day the staff arrived with breakfast to find Mary still and staring, her heart failing. Even as the monitor flatlined, the thing inside her moved, something long and sharp, pressing against her flesh. Unsure what to do, they left her there, waiting for someone else to make a decision. Now, from the rotting, bloated remains of Mary, they can hear scratching and a constant growl. Whatever Mary was carrying, it's decided, and it's finally time. Thank you for watching, and if you enjoyed this video, please give a like, leave a comment, and subscribe. Perhaps click the bell for notifications, and remember, hell is empty, and the devils are here.